Belarus shows that ordinary people have the power to resist even the most repressive of state machines. For 2 weeks now, day in, day out, ordinary people have taken to the streets in their tens of thousands in the wake of a rigged election which saw Alexander Lukashenko claim 80% of the vote compared to 10% for liberal challenger Svetlana Tikhanovskaya. And alongside the impressive street demonstrations, workers at dozens of enterprises have downed tools and really shown the power of working class people to collectively resist those at the top of society. One particular moment which I thought was brilliant, Lukashenko went to one of the heavy goods vehicle factories expecting to have a very positive reception from workers there, and instead workers began chanting "resign." Workers from other companies marched to that one, and then in order to support the strike there. And at that point, I think he realized that he would be fighting for the future of his regime. Lukashenko came to power in the chaos that followed the collapse of Stalinist Russia and the Eastern Bloc. Now, the Soviet Union claimed to be socialist, but it was really a state capitalist regime. A small minority at the top of society, the state bureaucracy, exploited working class people and competed militarily and economically with the West, while the priorities of that society were accumulating more capital, not the interests of ordinary people. In Belarus, the Stalinist bureaucracy was particularly conservative and was shaken by a series of very powerful strikes in 1991, but many of those figures managed to retain a large degree of control within that society. Instead of following the course of free market shock therapy, Lukashenko kept a lot of that state capitalist infrastructure intact. And in the new context of the world economy, he balanced between Russia and also the West and China. And more recently started bringing in free market sort of reforms in order to try and court investment from the West, which really begins to undermine and hollow out any support for his regime. Mass movements don't happen in an ideological vacuum, including those involving organized workers. In Belarus, Stalinism casts a very long shadow. It means that mass movements in Eastern Europe tend to be caught between defending bits of the old state capitalist system or looking to the market as an alternative to corruption, authoritarianism, and economic stagnation. And these debates run right through the opposition and also the workers' strikes in Belarus. One strike leader from the Minsk tractor factory says that the absence of oligarchs in Belarus is far from an achievement. Another worker whom I spoke with said he was in favor of fair privatization. And by this he meant we don't want corporations, we don't want oligarchs, but perhaps workers and local businessmen could buy shares alongside the state. Another Telegram channel has raised the demand of a ban on privatization in Belarus. Now, this doesn't mean that we should dismiss the movement or that the left or workers can't win social demands, that the fall of Lukashenko will just lead to some vile neoliberalism. What it means is that in every movement there is a battle over what comes next, and the same is true in the current movement against Lukashenko. The opposition body, the Coordinating Council, brings together a whole array of forces. There are liberals, there are sort of middle-class intellectuals, there are businessmen, there are some strike leaders, but you also have one guy who was the co-founder of the Institute of Privatization. You have to be pretty ghoulish to found that. To cut against those kind of figures, people on the Belarusian left are raising social demands. These are very important to go against the free marketeers. But what's also important is the question of political independence of the working class from these other social forces. Because we can't underestimate how difficult the struggle will be to not just go to sort of a pro-market, pro-West type liberal regime. In 1989, we saw those Stalinist regimes torn down. People took to the streets, workers struck, but those hopes were betrayed afterwards. The people who have been demanding democracy and social justice were dealt brutal free market shock therapy. Our hope today in Belarus is that that movement, those strikes, can build confidence so people can go much further than just parliamentary rule, but a society where ordinary people really are in charge.